So we've seen how to access properties on several types of elements in our Flash movies already. We've got a lot more to come, but before we leave this lesson, I want to get a few other things out that we consider fundamentals to understanding ActionScript. Now, the first of these fundamentals has to do with those variables we were talking about before, so let's go back and take a quick look at variables again. Now, I'm going to add a few more trace statements, so just so we can see our new trace statements, I'm going to comment out all the old ones. I'll just put slashes in front of them, and that way they won't be executed, and our output window won't be filled up with all kinds of junk. Okay, so I think we've cleaned all of them out there. Oh, one more where we trace the score. I'll leave that one there for right now. Now at the bottom of our code, I'm just going to add another line, and I'd like to take a quick look at variables, and what I'm looking at now is what variables store. Now remember, we had the variable called Fred all the way at the top, and we set it equal to 2. Now, I'd like to do a little trace statement, and inside of the trace statement message, I'd like to perform a little addition. We can say Fred plus Fred. Now, I'm sure everyone out there can figure out what Fred plus Fred is, knowing that Fred is equal to 2. It should be 4, correct? All right, let's take a look. We can see placeholders up here when we test our movie, and we can see the number 4. So, wonder of wonders, ActionScript can actually add two numbers together. And we can do almost any normal operation that you would expect a program language to do with that value. Let's create another variable. Let's call this variable George. Now, I'm just making up funny names for variables right now, but I'd like to set George equal to 2 as well, but this time I'm going to put the 2 in quotes. Now what I'd like to do is take a look at what we're talking about when we talk about a literal string. The word string is used a lot in programming languages, and it basically refers to a character. Now how is this different from Fred? Fred was set equal to, let me scroll all the way up here to the top, the number 2. We add 2 and 2 together, we can get 4. When we set a variable equal to a string, this is simply the character 2. Now let's do the same thing. Let's do a quick trace. We'll do George plus George. Now the results might surprise you because we're still adding 2 and 2 together, right? Let's see what we get. I'll test my movie, Control-Enter, or Command-Enter. I got 22. Seems odd at first, but it's actually correct. I took the character 2 and added onto the end of it another character 2. Now this is going to be very important, the difference between strings and numbers in the program. And it's so important that I'm going to rewrite the way we do our variables. Now you can see how this can be very confusing for you later on. In later lessons, we'll be hooking up external data sources. You might not even know the values before your Flash movie runs, so it can get even more confusing when you don't even know the values of the variables that are being dropped into this location. Now, to fix this, I'm going to introduce one more thing for describing variables in the program. We're going to do two things when we set up our variables. Instead of just setting them equal to some value, we're also going to do typing and scoping of our variables. Now, this is going to add to our syntax a little bit, but this is a best practice. In order to set up a variable, the first thing I'll probably be using is the var keyword. Let me change George so that we're using the var keyword. I simply type var in front of it, and what that does is it sets up the places where the George variable is going to be valid. Now that doesn't make too much sense right now, but I'm introducing it as a syntax element, and this is basically what we call in Flash ActionScript a best practice. It's something that you want to get used to doing. Now obviously you can get away without doing it because we successfully set the George variable to the character 2 before without using this, but by doing this, it's setting that variable so that the variable George is only valid in this script window. In later, more complicated scripts, let's say you're using a more common variable name like x. If you use the variable x in one script window and use the variable x again in another script window, it could actually cause problems. You could have those two variables colliding with one another. Okay, so scoping is simply typing var in front of it. Now we will be revisiting this, but I'm going to add one more thing onto this, and this is called typing a variable. I'm going to use a colon at the end of George, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose from one of the different types of variables I could have. Now we're seeing another level of hinting coming into the ActionScript. As soon as I typed the colon, it popped up a menu, and these are all the different types of variables that I can have in the program. If I just stick to the two that we've been working with, you can see there I could specify number if I wanted it to be a simple numeric value, like 350 right up here setting equal to the y, or I could go down here and choose string. That would set it up to be a character value, the exact way we've had it here. Now to use this help system, you can either start typing or you can select it from the pull-down menu. And let me move my menu up here a little bit. And you'll notice as I start typing capital S, T, you can see it goes down to string, and I can simply hit the Enter key and it will finish typing for me. Now what we've done is we've just specified that the new variable called George will always have a string character in it. This will make sure that the program knows exactly what we're trying to put into that variable, and we won't get confused as to whether we're using numbers or strings. To use this same correct syntax on Fred, I will go back up to Fred here at the top, and I'd write in var, using that var keyword in front of Fred, and I'd also type it. I'm starting to type NU, and you can see it goes to number. Now, since the program is case sensitive, it's very important that I type capital NU and not lowercase n. You can see it's not finding anything in the help menu, and that gives me a good cue that I'm not putting in the right values there. Now, just to see how this is going to help me in the program, if you accidentally put the wrong type of variable into something that's specified to be a number, for instance, what if I were to put quotes around this, to value here, and we test out our program. Control Enter, I'll get an error, and it says type mismatch. It was expecting a number, and I gave it a string. Now, once again, this is a little early to completely understand what we're doing, but what we're trying to do at this point is to set up some good habits for everyone so that you won't have so many problems with your programming when you get into the more complex scripts.